Well, it's October 2023 and Adobe have released an update to Lightroom along with a corresponding update to Camera Raw. And amongst all the new features, there's one in particular that makes it so much easier to target and manipulate colours. And that's point colour. And that's exactly what I want to show you in this video. Okay, so here in Lightroom I have a file open consisting of 5 squares with 5 different values of blue. Now if I wanted to adjust the colour in some way, we've got the colour mixer that has been around for quite some time. I can adjust the hue, saturation and luminance of colours within the image. The trouble is though, when I drag the blue slider as an example, I'm affecting all the squares. What if I wanted to adjust just one of them, say the one in the middle? But now I'll go to the Target Adjustment tool, click on it and then position it on the middle square. I can then press down and drag left and right to alter the hue, saturation or luminance depending on which section I'm in. The problem though is that this is still affecting the other squares. So I'll reset all of this by holding down the Option key on Mac or Alt key on Windows and clicking on Reset Mixer. And instead I'll go to the new Point Color section. In here I'll use the Sample Spot Color tool by clicking on it and then position it over the middle square and then press down. The colour directly underneath the Spot Color tool is then sampled and appears in here. Now I can drag the hue, saturation and luminance sliders to alter the blue. However, the same problem still exists in that all of the other squares are still being affected. But this is where the power of point colour really shines. I'll double click on the words Hue Shift to reset that slider. And then I'll come down to this area here where we have the range slider, which by default is set at 50. This slider ranges from 0 to 100, and if I drag to the left, it reduces the range of colours being affected, and if I drag to the right, it increases the range of colours being affected. I'm going to drag it all the way to the left to 0. Now underneath this, we have the Visualize Range checkbox. If I tick the checkbox to turn it on, we can see what colours are being targeted and what will be affected when we use the sliders. Any areas that are now grey and desaturated won't be affected, and any areas that are still in colour will be. So I need to reduce the range even more in this case so that I only affect the middle square and no others. I'll click here to open up even more options where we now have access to the hue range, saturation range and luminance range. Any colours within this area are ones that will be adjusted, and to a lesser extent, colours that fall into these areas here on either side. So to reduce the range of colours, I can drag these side markers inwards, and as I do, notice how the far right square has now become desaturated, meaning it won't be affected. It's now outside of the affected range. I can make this centre area even smaller by dragging the sides inwards, and then bring in the outer markers too, and look how now I've really reduced the range of colours so that the only one I'm going to affect is the middle one, the one that I wanted. Now that's all set, I'll turn off the Visualize Range to return to the full colour view, and then I can use the hue, saturation and luminance sliders to alter the middle square, but notice how none of the others are being affected. Also notice here that the original colour is on the left and we see the change we've made on the right. I can also open up this section here where we can click and drag to make changes rather than using sliders. Left and right to alter the hue, and up and down to alter the saturation. I can also hold down the Command key on Mac or Control key on Windows to keep the adjustment only affecting the hue when I drag left and right. And I can also hold down the Shift key when dragging up and down to only affect the saturation. This section on the right hand side I can use to alter the luminance, so down to darken and up to lighten. Also, as I move these areas around, notice how the corresponding slider is moving below. So now let's put all of this into practice. On this image here, let's just say that I want the grass to be a bit more, well, grass-like, a bit more green and vibrant. If I use the mixer and drag the green slider, you can see it doesn't just affect the grass, so that's not going to work. Instead, I'll use point color. I'll grab the sample spot color tool and click on an area of grass to sample it. Then I'll turn on the Visualize Range checkbox to see what colours are currently being targeted, and we can see straight away it's more than the grass, so I need to reduce the range further. I'll drag the range slider all the way to the left, and you can see a visual representation of how that is reducing the range here. Now that reduced the range, but I do need to reduce it even further, so I'll drag in the markers on the Hue Range slider. That's definitely reduced it some more, but I need to remove the dark greens from the range too, so I'll use the luminance range and drag that in a touch too. Perfect. I'll turn off the Visualize Range checkbox and then use the Hue, Saturation and Luminance sliders to alter the grass. And there we go. Before and after, before and after. Now this portrait here, I've shown before how I'll reduce the reddening on his face and use the hue saturation adjustment layer, a mask and a brush, and that worked a treat, but there were quite a few steps involved. But with point color, I can do it so much easier. I'll zoom in and then with the sample spot color tool, I'll sample an area of red skin. I'll turn on the Visualize Range checkbox and then drag the range slider over to the left to reduce the range of colours. I'll also adjust the hue range. And there we go. The only areas now in colour are the areas of red skin, the areas I want to alter. So I turn off the Visualize Range checkbox and then just use the hue shift to remove the reddening. Done. And here's before and after, before and after. Now something else that makes point color even more powerful is that we can use it within the masking section. I'll just reset this by holding down the Option key on Mac or Alt key on Windows and clicking on Reset Point Color. I'll then go to the masking section. I'll choose a brush. And let's just say, for whatever reason, I only want to reduce the red on this side of the man's face. Then I use the Sample Spot Color tool and sample the red skin on that side. I'll turn on the Visualize Range checkbox, drag the range slider all the way to the left, and also the hue range. But look how the only area being affected is the area within the mask I created with the brush. Alright, turn off the Visualize Range, then just adjust the hue and the reddening is gone. That is so powerful and so easy. Now I'm going to be covering this and a lot more in the two classes that I'm presenting for the Photoshop Virtual Summit 5 coming up on October 30th through November the 3rd. That's 5 days with 20 instructors and 40 classes that you can watch completely for free. You just need to grab a free pass using this link that I've included in the description of this video, and then you're good to go. Right, that's me, I'm done. So as always, I'd really appreciate a like if you've got something from this video, and if you haven't already, click on subscribe. That should just say follow so you don't miss any of the new content I'm working on. But for now, like I said, that's me, I'm done. I'll catch you in the next video.